I have a secret to share, a secret that spending over 12 years in finance has taught me, that no matter how hard the finance world tries to convince us otherwise, that good personal finance boils down to a few key principles. And that's the thinking behind this book, that all the personal finance advice you ever really need to know can fit onto a single index card. So in this video, we're going to be going through the 9 simple rules from the book, as well as practical steps that you can take to follow them. Just like getting healthy comes down to a few key actions, eating right, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, exercising regularly, personal finance is no different. Save 20% of your income. How do you build wealth? You earn money, right? Well, technically only half right. You can only build wealth with the money that you keep, not just the money that you earn. Who is more financially free? Someone who makes 40 grand a year but spends 20, or someone who makes 2 million a year but spends 3 million? This is why saving is one of the most important starting points when it comes to building wealth and being financially free. But this is the problem. It has never been easier to spend money. Contactless payments, instant bank transfers, 0% credit cards, buy now, pay later. The ability to spend money at the touch of a button or the swipe of a phone has meant that there have never been fewer barriers to separate you from your hard-earned cash. And it's no wonder that almost 47% of Americans report not being able to come up with $400 without selling something, borrowing from a friend, or worst of all, reverting to credit cards. And this only really leaves you with one important takeaway, that most people need to get better at saving money, learning how to hold on to as much of your paycheck as possible every single month. But as we mentioned at the start of the video, we're not just talking about theory and finger-wagging business here. We're also in the business of giving practical steps that you can take to get there too. And before people roll their eyes, there's plenty of empirical evidence for this one, that having a budget will lead you to better financial outcomes. Take this paper here, for example, which found that UK households using a budget tend to experience fewer financial shocks and report less financial stress. And just so we're very clear, I'm not advocating that you have to have a very detailed budget that you have to review every 12 hours. I would use a budget where you only have to track 3 numbers, the 50-30-20 budget. 50% of your after-tax income on your needs, 30% on your wants, and 20% on your saving and investing. And don't underestimate the value of the 30%. Another helpful one here is to pay yourself first. Most people get paid, they pay their needs, they pay their wants, and then they leave saving and investing until last. Paying yourself flips this on its head. You get paid, and then you treat your saving and investing as though it's another bill, and then you spend what's left on your wants. And invariably, because they're things you want to spend your money on, you always find those savings. You can also turn the technology to your advantage. We've already discussed about how technology has meant it's never been easier to spend money. Well, make sure you have an automation for saving money too. Set up an automation to deposit money into your savings account as soon as you get paid. Pay your credit card in full every month. We've talked about how easy it is to spend money, but what really happens if you don't have savings and you end up being in credit card debt? High interest debt like credit cards can be one of the easiest and quickest ways to erode all the financial progress you might be making in other parts of your financial life. There's no point having a savings account and getting 3, 4, 5%, or making gains on investments of 10% a year if you have credit card debt of 30%. So it's unbelievably important to make sure that you treat this one with the respect it deserves. Make sure you're paying the balance in full every single month. Almost half of people fail to pay off their credit card bill in full every month. And we see similar sorts of numbers here in the UK, where in 2023, 43% of UK households had credit card debt. We talk a lot on this channel and in the personal finance world about how compound interest is a magical thing, and everyone throws up this Einstein quote that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Compound interest is an extremely important tool when it comes to building wealth. It's how you can invest £90 a month from 18 to 65, and that can be sufficient to have you retire a millionaire. But this incredibly powerful force can also work against you when it comes to debt, especially high interest debt. As credit card debt piles up and compounds, the interest alone can end up being more than the initial debt that you took on itself. So what are some methods you can use to pay off credit card debt? First is the snowball method. Pay off the smallest balance first, but maintaining the minimum payments on other credit cards. This creates this kind of psychological boost as you start to see the debts fall one by one by one. Next, you've got the avalanche method. Focus on paying off the card with the highest interest rate first, and then this minimizes the total amount of interest you end up paying over time. You can transfer balances from high rates to low or zero introductory interest. You've also got debt consolidation. Maybe you combine multiple credit cards into a single loan with a lower interest rate and more manageable monthly payments. Increasing the frequency of your payments, say from monthly to fortnightly, reduces the interest accrual and pays down the debt faster. Never buy or sell individual securities. The investing world spends billions every year, hires the smartest people from the best universities, has more PhDs than they know what to do with, have the fastest computers, the most powerful algorithms. And what does the evidence show? that time and time and time again, that they can't accurately predict where stock prices are likely to go. So frankly, what makes you think you can? Imagine this. If you had said to someone in 2007 that Nokia, which at the time had a share of the phone market of 30 or 35%, was going to be surpassed in a few short years by a brand new competitor company who had never made a mobile phone before, who had only just scraped themselves from filing from bankruptcy, people would have looked at you like you were stark raving mad. But in less than 5 years, Apple had not only released the iPhone, but it has also surpassed Nokia in market share. And today, Nokia's market share is less than 0.5%. The infamous Enron scandal is another good example. At its peak, Enron's market cap was around $70 billion and making $100 billion in revenue, putting it alongside some of the largest companies in the world at the time. But that was in 2000, and then by 2001, Enron had declared bankruptcy. Whilst these downfalls seem like the most obvious thing in the world with the 2020 vision of hindsight, the truth is that it wasn't blindingly obvious at the time. But what am I trying to say here? The main takeaway really is that if there are people and institutions out there with all the resources imaginable, and even they can't beat the market, what's the likelihood that a single person who is a part-time investor can? But there's even more to it. Even if you could develop some fantastic algorithm that allowed you to beat the market, the truth is that the risk you'd be exposing you and your finances to of being invested in a single asset puts you in a risk profile way beyond what I suspect most people would be comfortable with. Pay attention to fees. So if I told you I was considering investing in 2 different fund providers, one of them had an investing fee of 1% and another had an investing fee of 2%, you'd probably say, well, what's the big deal? It's only a 1% difference in fee and that doesn't sound too bad. But oh my, would you be wrong? Let's run the numbers on this one. Say you invest £100 a month from the age of 18 all the way up to when you retire at 65. And for the sake of argument, let's say you get an average 10% return. If I give you a second, what do you think would be the difference in the 2 fund sizes by the time you hit 65? 10k, 20k, 50k, 100k. The difference in value would be £221,631, a truly staggering amount of money. The fund with a 1% fee would have £788,402 in. The fund with a 2% fee would be worth £566,771. Just like with credit cards, the same compounding force of nature that allows your investments to grow over time and build your wealth is also going to be the exact same thing that will erode the value of your investments over time. A small change in fees stretched over a longer time horizon can make a monumental difference to the value of your portfolio. And I really want to tie all this together with a tweet from Remit Sethi here, who, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best personal finance legends out there. Think a 1% fee isn't much. Here's the surprising maths behind paying a 1% fee to a financial advisor. Let's say you're 30 years old and you invest $50,000 and contribute another $1,000 every single month. In 35 years, with a low 0.2% management fee and assuming a 7% return, you'd have just over $2 million. But if you paid a financial advisor 1%, then you'd only have $1.7 million. That's more than $380,000 going into your advisor's pockets in fees. By the way, if you pay 2%, that's over $750,000 in fees. This is what I mean when I say that a 1% fee could cost you 28% of your lifetime returns. And that leads us on to our next topic in the book: buy inexpensive, well-diversified index funds. So we've already discussed at some length why buying individual stocks is a folly, that the likelihood of an individual investor picking the right stock at the right price at the right time is so infinitesimally small that it should not be the cornerstone of funding your retirement. So if you can't buy individual stocks, and as we've discussed, you need to watch out for your fees, ultimately, where does this leave you? Just how about this? Rather than trying to beat the market, why not just buy the market? Warren Buffett is widely considered to be the greatest investor in history. He said this in his 2013 letter to the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders: "My advice to the trustee could not be more simple. Put 10% of cash in short-term government bonds and 90% in a very low-cost S&P 500 index fund." Yes, you heard him right. The ultimate stock picker of all time still recommends putting your money in a simple, low-cost, well-diversified index fund. Because Warren gets it that after over 7 decades of investing, a broad index fund over a long period of time is going to, in the vast majority of cases, beat actively managed funds. But it's not just the gains. The other big advantage that index funds have is not only do they very often beat actively managed funds, but they are also much, much cheaper than active funds. And this has always been the conundrum of an active fund, that even if they are able to beat the market, which frankly few of them can do, the wins will often get gobbled up by sky-high fees. So lots of people get trapped with subpar returns and pay well over the odds for those subpar returns. So the winning combination of better overall returns combined with lower fees means that you are giving your portfolio the best possible opportunity to grow. And that leads us to the next rule on the index card, which is maximize your pensions. Now, pensions are very often overlooked, but the truth is that putting as much money as you can into your tax advantage retirement account is going to be, in all probability, the thing that will fund your retirement and your financial security in future. Unlike exercising and eating right, what do you think are the chances that you're going to regret having saved too much money when you retire, to have too big a retirement nest egg? And the truth is, there's plenty of evidence to support quite the opposite. I mean, take a look at this study from Moneybox done in February. A study by Moneybox found that 40% of British adults regret not prioritizing saving earlier in life, and over 50% of those over 55 specifically wish they had started saving for retirement sooner. And let's not forget, when it comes to pensions, you get two main benefits. You get the guaranteed 100% return of your money when your employer contributes on your behalf, as well as you contributing. And frankly, there are not many bets in life where you can get a guaranteed 100% return on your money. But you also get the tax relief when you make contributions. Just take a look at this diagram. This shows how much a taxpayer in each tax band would have to contribute in order to make a £100 contribution. If you're a basic rate taxpayer, then for every £80 you contribute, the government adds £20, which is your 20% basic relief. High rate taxpayers can claim an additional 40%, and additional rate taxpayers can claim 45%. So this means that, particularly for high earners, pensions can be extremely powerful tools. And I think it's fair to say, the more you earn, or the higher tax bracket you're in, I should say, the more beneficial it is for you to make pension contributions. We've been through the two main ones, but there are also other ones as well. The current annual allowance for pension contributions is £60,000 or 100% of your income. And another thing that isn't often talked about when it comes to pensions is that you can go back for the last 3 years and reuse any unused allowances. So you could potentially have up to £180,000 of allowances to go back and use. You can also get the benefit of the tax-free lump sum when you get to the minimum pension age. It's 55 at the moment and will be 57 in 2028. So we've discussed pensions, but what about other tax-advantaged accounts? You should really maximise savings in other tax-advantaged accounts. So we've talked about the benefits of pensions, but the good news is that tax-advantaged accounts don't stop there. So the way a pension works is that you make a contribution to your pension pot. You get tax relief on that contribution, but then you have to pay tax when you draw down from your pension when you retire. No tax on the way in, but you do get taxed on the way out. But when it comes to an ISA, things work a little differently. You contribute to your ISA from your after-tax income, but all the dividends and capital gains are tax-free, just like a pension. But unlike a pension, you can draw that money down and not pay any income tax. So as we kind of mentioned, pensions get a more generous tax relief up front, but you're then subject to all these numerous and onerous rules and restrictions about when and how you can take your money out. And you also get taxed on most of that money when you take it back out. But the nice thing about ISAs is they're way simpler, they're much more flexible, but you are held back by a lower annual limit. But £20,000 a year is still a fantastic limit when you consider that you have to contribute to it post-tax. But the truth is, it makes perfect sense to not go all in on one or the other, but instead to make contributions to both. They have a different set of rules and restrictions that govern how you can use them, but that just means you should use them differently. Perfectly sound advice is to maximize your pension contributions that your employer will match, then maximize your ISA allowance, and then to maximize your pension contributions after that. Make your financial advisors commit to a higher standard. Now, this is kind of a US specific one, but there's certainly some worthwhile applications here in the UK. Let's just look at the empirical analysis on this one from Freakonomics, one of my favorite books. Let's say you want to sell your home. So you hire an agent and they tell you, don't worry, we'll get the best possible price for your sale because I take a percentage of the final sale price. That's how they earn their commission, and that makes sense. If their fee is 3%, they would rather have 3% of 300k than 200k. But in the book, they explore that the objectives of agents and house sellers are often not quite aligned because of different incentives. This is a claim which they base on empirical evidence, which showed that, including a study which showed estate agents take longer to sell their own homes and secure better prices, which basically showing that they behave differently when they are the sellers. And why is that? Well, their findings were basically that because agents earn a commission on the sale price, that they benefit less from maximizing the sale price compared to the seller. For example, if an agent earns 3% commission, pushing for an additional £10,000 on a sale price only nets them another £300, but requires potentially a lot of additional effort. So this misalignment means that the agents prioritize quick sales over higher prices. So the incentive for them is to accept a lower offer now rather than hold out for a better one where they might not see their 3% fee, if at all. And so you might be thinking, well, what does this mean for me and my finances? And the answer is pretty simple, actually. The bottom line is this: to make sure that the people who are acting on your behalf, or whose advice you're taking, or whose experience you're basing your decisions on, make sure that their goals are aligned with your goals, that their incentive structures align with your objectives. I think that for most investors, managing your own money is not only the simplest and most transparent way, but it's also the cheapest by miles. And by all accounts, which we've already discussed, it seems like it won't necessarily even hurt your returns either. Okay, here we go. Last rule here. Promote social insurance programs. I always thought that this was an interesting inclusion. It's easy to complain about all the taxes we have to pay: income tax, national insurance, sales tax, fuel duty, alcohol duty, stamp duty. But the truth is that in all probability, the majority of us will rely on the social safety net at some stage in our lives. Here in the UK, according to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, as many as 1 in 5 people in the UK at any given time will rely on social benefits, and chances are you were brought into this world by an NHS midwife, doctor, nurse, or surgeon. And in the US, a study from Cornell University found that 96% of Americans have at some point in their lives received some kind of government support or benefit. But I think the main point here is that really advocating for the social safety net is a worthwhile thing to do, because as it turns out, and the numbers back this up, you never know when you might be on the receiving end of it. And I think the main thing to remember here is that people often confuse sophistication and complexity. And the truth is that when it comes to your money, keeping things as simple as possible can make life so much easier, and as it turns out, doesn't necessarily have to compromise where you want to go with your money. I've taken my 12 years in finance and distilled it down to what I think are 10 rules that will fit onto an index card. This is my remixed version of the video we've just done. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it, and when the video drops, I'll put the link just here as well so you can jump straight to it. Thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.